Hello, econ students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for the beginning of chapter 4. We're going to talk about microeconomics, and we're going to talk about the law of demand, which is really important when we talk about economics. So, the question is, what is demand? And that's where we're going to start here. So, what are three factors that determine demand for a product? And one is the desire, a desire that, you want the product. Second is the ability to own the product. And then finally, third is the willingness to buy the product. If you do not have one of these three items, you do not have demand. You've got to have desire, ability, and willingness to buy. And one of the things that you should note is that when we look at a demand curve, we're talking about price and quantity. And the higher the price, the less quantity we want to buy. So if we can get lower prices, I, as a consumer, am going to want to purchase more. So we've got a kind of an old-fashioned scenario here. Compact disc, and I realize that might be the way of the dinosaurs, but hear me out on this. When compact discs are really expensive, people want less. So at $30, people don't want any. At $25, people really don't want any. But at $20, maybe a person might want one. At $15, you might have a higher demand of maybe three. At $10 a piece, you might desire 5 CDs. And as the price goes lower at $5, you might want 8. That's kind of how that works. So, what is microeconomics? Microeconomics is the kind of the economic theory that deals with the behavior and decision making by individual units such as people and businesses. So there really are two areas of economics. There's the micro and the macro. Macro looks at kind of the big picture. It's looking at maybe an entire nation and their demand for maybe a product. But in micro, we're looking at one firm or one individual. Okay, so what is the purpose of a demand schedule? Well, over here on the right side of the screen, we actually have a demand schedule. It's kind of set up like a chart. Okay, it shows just the various quantities demanded of a product at all possible prices that might prevail in a market during a given time. So, at $17, you might want one CD, but at $5 a CD, you might want more. You might want 4. So that's kind of how that kind of shows us. How is a demand curve similar to a demand schedule, and how is it different? Well, one of the things that you should understand is that a curve is kind of like a graph. It displays the same information as a demand schedule. It's showing quantity demanded at each price in the market. But the difference is the info is presented in the form of a graph or a curve, whereas in a demand schedule, it is presented in the form of a table. Some people like the table, some people like the visual of a curve. Okay? When we talk about the law of demand, demand basically says that quantity demanded varies inversely with its price. So if you look at the graphic kind of down in the bottom left-hand corner, when price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. When price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. It's that inverse relationship. So when one goes up, one has to go down. It's kind of like the opposite. That's what we mean by the inverse. So, what does a market demand curve show? And it just shows the quantities demanded by everyone who is interested in purchasing the product within a market. So if we have, let's say, consumers maybe in one town versus another town, we can kind of see who wants that. What is marginal utility? Okay, anytime that we see the word utility, we're thinking about usefulness. So it's the extra usefulness or an additional satisfaction a person gets from acquiring one or using one or more of a product. So the graphic that you see down below with the burgers, usually the first burger and maybe even the first bite of the burger is very satisfying. But if you eat multiple burgers, maybe two or three, by the time you get to that third burger, that first bite might not be as pleasant as the original burger. So there is this thing called diminishing marginal utility, and that's kind of where number 8 is kind of leading us. How does the principle of diminishing marginal utility affect how much people are willing to pay? So you get that extra satisfaction from using additional units or quantities of a product, but it declines because of our diminishing satisfaction. So going back to the burgers, burger 1, awesome. Burger 3, maybe not as awesome because you're getting full, or maybe you've eaten so much you're getting sick. Okay? We usually are not willing to pay as much for the second or the third item or burger as we would have if we had paid for just one or for the first. So the deal is, if I'm going to keep you satisfied or wanting to buy more, I probably need to make burger 2 or burger 3 somewhat discounted. So that way you will continue to purchase that. All right. So individual and market demands. So you can kind of see the different curves that we have here. We got Mike's individual demand curve for the amount of CDs that he wants. We also have Julia's, and then we have the market demand. What is point A might not be the same for the market demand as it is for, let's say, Mike or Julia. Same goes with point B and point D. So, thank you very much.